Hello, welcome to Chapter Book Storytime. I'm Ellen from EVPL Oakland Library, and on today's edition of the Variety Pack, I'm bringing back one of my favorite authors, Margaret Peterson Haddix, and her latest book. It's called Moonleapers. This is the story of Maisie, a young girl who's about to find out that she belongs to a very secretive group called the Moonleapers. But when she does, everything becomes clear. Why her parents have wanted her to learn the things that they've instructed her in, why she stands out from among her classmates, and not always in a good way. Everything begins to make sense. The one thing she's not sure of is, what is the purpose of the Moonleapers, and what is her role in the group? Whatever it is, it all seems to be centering around her Great-Aunt Hazel. Let's get started. Chapter 1. Maisie, is that you? Mom's voice floated down from her second-floor office as soon as Maisie pushed open the front door. Mom always asked that question when Maisie got home from school, and as always, Maisie was tempted to call back, "Who else would it be?" Dad was away on some business trip, also as always. And Maisie's younger brother and sister, Rufus and Dora, were in the after-school latchkey program. Only Maisie, at 12, was deemed old enough to come home on her own. For the next 3 hours, she'd have the entire house, except for Mom's office, completely to herself. It was heaven. It was the best thing about being in 6th grade. Some days it seemed like the only good thing about being in 6th grade. But Maisie wasn't going to be thinking about that now, not when she had 3 golden hours ahead of her, entirely to herself. "No, Mom, it's not me. It's burglars come to steal our family treasures," Maisie called back, just loud enough that Mom could tell she had answered, but not so loud that Mom could be able to make out actual words. Maisie liked giving snarky answers that no one could hear. Yesterday, she'd said, "It's trained assassins," and the day before that, she'd said, "It's pirates of the high seas who read their maps wrong and somehow ended up in Ohio." And both times, Mom had only hollered back, "Great, welcome home. Get a snack and do your homework, and I'll be down to hear about your day as soon as I can take a break." Mom never had time for a break. And that was quite all right with Maisie. Waiting until 6 o'clock to tell Mom about what had happened at school that day gave Maisie time to pretty the story up, to make it something that wouldn't worry anyone, to make it parent appropriate. Anyhow, by then, Mom would probably forget to ask. Maisie stepped into the house and shut the door behind her. She dropped her backpack to the floor and listened for Mom's distracted, "Great, welcome home." But that wasn't the next sound that Maisie heard. Instead, a doorknob rattled upstairs from the direction of Mom's office. Maisie stood on her tiptoes and peered past the railing that separated the cathedral ceiling of the foyer from the second-story loft and the lineup of rooms on that floor. Mom was coming out of her office. Now, 3 hours early. Mom stepped over to the railing of the second-floor loft. "Good thing we don't have any family treasures for burglars to steal," she called down to Maisie. Maisie gulped. "You heard me?" she all but whispered. "Maisie, I always listen," Mom said, which really didn't answer the question. Maisie decided not to ask if Mom had heard Maisie's other snarky answers all along, because Mom turned to the right and began descending the stairs, and it was a sight to behold. Mom was tall and elegant and willowy, and she could make stepping past the homemade basketball net Rufus and Dora had stretched across the top step, and then a few steps down, dodging the Nerf basketball itself, look as graceful as ballet. Mom was also one of those people who believed she should dress up for work, even when she was working from home. So she was wearing a crisp, light, white linen dress. Each perfectly straightened strand of her rich dark brown hair bounced gently across her shoulders. Mom was even wearing high heels. It made Maisie remember that the elastic in her own right sock had given up the ghost in the middle of lunch, and it had sagged down into her purple sneaker. When Maisie reached down to tug it back up, she'd accidentally flipped a forkful of cafeteria spaghetti onto her khaki shorts. And using wet paper towels in the bathroom to scrub off the mess had only added a tinge of brown to the tomatoey stain. Anyhow, even without stains, Maisie's clothes were always wrinkled and drooping or stretched out in all the wrong places. And unlike Mom, Maisie had scribble-scrabble hair that seemed to have a mind of its own about sticking up or springing out into waves or curls at the oddest of times. Maisie could comb it and have it lying down perfectly flat, and then 3 seconds later it would be going every which way again. This happened even on days like today when there was no wind, not even the slightest hint of a breeze. Mom had said once, "Maisie, you've seen pictures of when I was a kid, right? I look just like you at your age." That was probably supposed to give Maisie hope that someday she would grow out of always having saggy socks and messy hair and stains on her clothes. But mostly, it just made her feel unfinished, incomplete. And what if she didn't want to grow up to be like Mom? Mom reached the bottom of the stairs and pivoted to lean elegantly against the newel post. "Maisie, I wanted to talk to you before Rufus and Dora get home," Mom said. She lifted an eyebrow and gave Maisie a faint, mysterious smile. "I have some good news and some bad news. Which would you like first?" Mom, and for that matter Dad, too, when he wasn't off traveling somewhere, always played the good news, bad news game. Maisie had learned a long time ago. The good news was always something like, "We've decided you can have half of a sugar-free, gluten-free faux chocolate candy bar as a special treat." And that the bad news would be more like, "We just realized that it's absolutely essential for you to learn ancient Greek, so we've signed you up for 10 hours of classes a week. You'll have to start getting up at 5 a.m. every day." Just since Maisie had started 6th grade, Mom and or Dad had signed her up to learn ancient Greek, French, Latin, Morse code, American Sign Language, formal logic, small engine repair, electronic circuitry, and computer coding. 4.5 bars of sugar-free, gluten-free faux chocolate didn't even begin to make up for that. But Maisie figured if there was any good news out there at all, she wanted to hear it before the bad. "Great, I like delivering good news," Mom said. "So, ta-da! This is for you." Mom had her right arm tucked behind her back, and Maisie had assumed that was just to prove that Mom could gracefully descend a flight of stairs in high heels without even holding on to the banister. But now Mom swung the arm around into plain sight and unfurled her hand, revealing something flat, black, and rectangular. "Oh, that's fake dark chocolate," Maisie thought. "Well, at least it's something different." Mom took 3 steps closer. She cupped both hands under the flat black thing and held it out to Maisie the way someone might offer a kitten or a guinea pig or a gerbil to be petted. Maisie was not going to pet a chocolate bar, especially not fake chocolate. "I know you've been asking for your own cell phone for years, and we've always said no before," Mom began. "But..." Maisie grabbed the flat, black, rectangular object from Mom's hands. It felt both solid and slippery to Maisie's touch, and Maisie clutched it tight. "You got me a phone!" Maisie swiped a finger across the top surface, the screen, and a blue light glowed up at her. "It is a phone! Oh, well, Mom, I thought you were going to say no forever. I thought I'd be 1,000 years old before you let me have one." Maisie couldn't help herself. She hugged the phone to her chest and whirled around in an impromptu dance of pure joy. And if her dance was completely inelegant and graceless, and she stumbled over her own feet twice just in the first spin, who cared? "I have my own phone now," Maisie rejoiced, practically waltzing with the phone. "You're going to let me be like every other 6th grader on the planet." "Maisie," Mom began, and her voice was so sad and serious that Maisie stopped spinning. For a moment, Maisie just stood there, her heart pumping fast. And then she saw what she'd said wrong. "Oh, right, Mom. I know you want me to remember that not every kid on the planet can afford a phone," Maisie added quickly. "I'm sorry about that. I really am. But don't you know that I'm the very last kid at my school to get a phone? Not that I'm complaining. I have one now. Or do I have to promise that I really do know that I shouldn't try to be just like everyone else? Believe me, I know I'm an individual. I'll keep putting the weird in Weird Woman Middle School. Don't you worry about that." Maisie's school was actually called Weird Wyman Middle School, But every year, some kid rediscovered the slightly different pronunciation. And every year, some administrator gave a speech about how weirdness was nothing to be ashamed of. And anyhow, shouldn't they all just embrace their own oddities? During that speech this year, every single kid in the auditorium had turned and looked at Maisie. And no, it wasn't just Maisie's imagination that really had happened. Mom's eyes flashed. Has anyone bullied you for being different? She asked. Has anyone ever called you weird? Oops. It was so tempting to reply, duh, Mom. I'm studying ancient Greek and Latin while other kids are playing video games and watching funny cat videos on YouTube and TikTok. What do you think they call me? But Mom didn't know about any of that. Maisie had been very, very careful to make sure Mom would never know. And anyhow, Maisie had her own phone now. She could watch any cat video she wanted, just like all the other kids. She could download every game app she heard the other kids talking about. She could text. She could be normal. Maisie rolled her eyes, a move she practiced by looking in a mirror. Mom, I was just giving examples, she said. Sheesh, I was trying to make a reasoned argument, just like I learned in those formal logic classes. And maybe I didn't do it perfectly, but remember, I'm still learning. In spite of herself, Maisie felt a little grateful for the formal logic classes, at least as an excuse. Oh, Mom said, well then, that wasn't even what I meant. I just meant, don't you want to know why Dad and I changed our minds about giving you a phone? I guess, Maisie said, though it wasn't true. She really wanted to keep dancing around with her new phone, or start using it. I think we should both sit down, Mom said. She put her hands on Maisie's shoulders and guided her toward the couch. But even when they had both settled in against the cushions, Mom didn't immediately start talking. Maisie could hear the tick of the grandfather clock behind them. It ticked and ticked and ticked. So, Mom finally began, this is about your Great-Aunt Hazel. That was actually her phone first. She wanted you to have it. Maisie wanted to interrupt and say, you think I'm going to be upset because you're giving me a hand-me-down phone? That's the bad news? Nope and nope. No problem. We're all good. Now you can go back to work and I can find TikTok on this thing and watch some funny cat videos. But Mom was acting so serious. Her eyes even glistened as if she was about to cry. Oh, no, Maisie thought. No, 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 no. Mom patted Maisie's knee. You know, Great-Aunt Hazel is really, really old, Mom went on. Like nearly 100, I think. And sometimes with elderly people, well, this is just a part of life, though you've never had to experience this before, so it's probably going to be a bit of a shock, but Maisie couldn't stand this anymore. She couldn't sit silently and wait for Mom to get to the point. You're saying Great-Aunt Hazel died, Maisie said flatly. She tried to soften her voice a little because Mom was still using the present tense. Mom must be really sad. What was it the people were supposed to say? Oh, right. I'm sorry for your loss, Mom. Maisie felt so grown up saying that. But Mom jolted back, smashing against the couch cushions. Dead? Mom exclaimed. You thought Great-Aunt Hazel was dead? Oh, no. She's just really, really sick right now. So sick she can't even use a phone anymore. That's how sick she is. Oh, Maisie said. She felt a little foolish. She'd wasted her first effort trying to comfort someone who was grieving when the person in question wasn't even dead. But this freed Maisie up to ask the question she really wanted to ask, the one that was burning in her mind. Okay then, tell me this, Maisie said. Who's Great-Aunt Hazel? Chapter 2. You don't remember Great-Aunt Hazel? Mom said faintly. The color drained from her face. She swayed like she was about to pass out. Don't you remember how much she adored you when you were 2, 3? Mom pulled her own phone from her pocket and tapped the screen a few times, calling up a picture Maisie was pretty sure she'd never seen before. It was a close-up of a white-haired old woman holding toddler Maisie on her lap. Everything in the background was fuzzy, so Maisie couldn't tell where the picture was taken. The old lady had on a gray sweater, dress, and because she had her head down, gazing at Maisie, the only part of her face that shows was a wrinkled cheek and chin. She could have been anyone. The only vivid part of the photo was toddler Maisie, her head thrown back in a fit of giggles, her hair pulled back in a wispy ponytail tied with a rainbow's worth of ribbons, her little kid yellow overalls streaked with what looked like grass stains and mud along the cuffs. That, at least, was definitely Maisie. Even then, Maisie thought, even when Mom was the one dressing me, she couldn't keep me from getting stains all over my clothes. Maisie pressed a finger against the screen and the phone showed when the photo was taken. 11 years earlier. Mom, I was barely a year old in that picture, Maisie protested. You can't expect me to remember something that happened when I was only 1. Have I ever seen this Great-Aunt Hazel since then? Maybe not. Mom looked confused, which wasn't like her, but she quickly recovered. Surely you've heard Dad and me talk about her. Surely. Nope. Why don't you wait till Rufus and Dora are home too, and then you can tell us all about Great-Aunt Hazel, Maisie suggested. I mean, I'm sorry she's sick and all, and that was so nice of her to want me to have her phone when she hadn't seen me in 11 years. I know. I can write her a thank you note that's a get well card too. You go back to work and I'll work on that right now. How does that sound? In Maisie's experience, adults loved it when kids wrote thank you notes. But Mom didn't pat Maisie on the back and tell her how thoughtful she was. No, Mom said, I still need to tell you the rest of the bad news. Mom bit her lip. So, I didn't know this until the nursing home called me, but Great-Aunt Hazel listed you and me on the paperwork as her next of kin and emergency contacts, Mom said. We're supposed to make decisions for Great-Aunt Hazel anytime she can't do that for herself. It's kind of ridiculous. You're a minor. There's no way you should be listed as having power of attorney or any other kind of power at all over another person's life. For a moment, Maisie wanted to protest. What? Don't you think I'm old enough for that? But she knew she wasn't. She didn't even like the thought of babysitting and having to tell little kids what to do. And I would have thought that instead of me, Great-Aunt Hazel might have chosen someone who... Well, never mind, Mom went on. I've decided to take it as a compliment that Great-Aunt Hazel trusts me. And who knows, maybe she thought nothing would happen to her until you were a grown-up. And so you should feel good that she expects to be able to trust you too. Being a grown-up was years and years away for Maisie. She figured she'd never have to worry about Great-Aunt Hazel regardless. Oh, so I guess you'll have to talk a lot with the nursing home or hospital or wherever Great-Aunt Hazel is staying, Maisie said to Mom. They'll call and say, should we try to make her better? And you'll say, yes. And maybe you'll need extra quiet when you're having those conversations. That's okay, Mom. I can be extra quiet. Quiet's like my specialty. No, none of this is okay, Mom said, almost sounding like she was scolding Maisie. And this isn't about being extra quiet. This is about family and knowing where you came from and knowing who you are. I feel like a failure as a mother that I didn't make sure that you truly got to know Great-Aunt Hazel, you and Rufus and Dora. But there's still time. The funny feeling in Maisie's stomach came back. Okay, well, I guess I could do like a FaceTime or a Zoom with Great-Aunt Hazel if I had to. That's not enough, Mom said, and I have to do a lot more for Great-Aunt Hazel than just answering a few phone calls. She cleared her throat like someone about to make an important announcement. School's out in 2 weeks. I've already canceled all our plans. We're going to move to Maryland for the summer so I can take care of Great-Aunt Hazel the way she deserves. And because it's too late to make any childcare arrangements there, you'll have to take care of Rufus and Dora while I'm working and helping Great-Aunt Hazel. That's why we decided to let you have a phone. Maisie peered down at the phone she was still clutching, the phone she'd been so thrilled about. And then she shoved it back into Mom's hands. I don't want a phone then, she said. I don't want to move to Maryland, even temporarily. And I definitely don't want to babysit Rufus and Dora all summer. Mom immediately dropped the phone back into Maisie's lap. It felt a little like they were playing hot potato. Maisie, this isn't your choice, Mom said. And at least she sounded a little sorry, a little like she cared how Maisie felt. But then Mom put her hands on Maisie's shoulders again. Maybe it was supposed to be a comforting gesture, but it felt like being squeezed into a vice, being trapped. Maisie, this is happening no matter what, Mom went on. We're doing this. Chapter 3. Later that evening, Maisie, Rufus, and Dora are hiding in Maisie's closet. Mom has sent them away to pack to move to Maryland, and they don't want to go. And their main question is, why? Rufus was 8 and had red hair and a face full of freckles. When he glared, his freckles smashed together, and he looked like an angry tomato. Dora was only 7. She had blonde hair and big blue eyes, and she could blink up at Maisie in a way that made Maisie feel like she would jump in front of a speeding semi-truck to protect Dora, if she had to. Maisie knew they couldn't hide in the closet forever, but maybe they could make it until bedtime without packing a single suitcase. And then maybe they'd wake up in the morning and it would turn out that it was all just a dream. Even the phone? She asked herself. Do you want the phone to just be a dream too? She patted it in her back pocket and sighed. She hadn't even had a chance to download YouTube yet or to text any friends. Not that she was sure of how many friends would want to text back and forth with her. They were all casual friends, sort of friends, just at school friends. Funny how having a phone now made that clear. But only because I didn't have a phone before. Now that I do, we can text all the time and Maisie was going to be away all summer anyhow. Rufus was still glaring at her. What do you mean it's because of money? She asked him. That's Rufus's theory. It's about money. Mom's ruining our summer because of some great aunt none of us remember. What's that got to do with money? Because Great-Aunt Hazel must be rich, Rufus said, like he was explaining something as obvious as 2 + 2. She must be about to die, and then Mom's going to inherit all her money. Why else would Mom want to spend all summer visiting Great-Aunt Hazel except to make sure that Great-Aunt Hazel doesn't change her mind and give the money to someone else at the last minute? Dora gasped. You're saying Mom's greedy, she exclaimed. That's mean. Didn't you hear Mom say she loves Great-Aunt Hazel? Maisie thought about how Mom hadn't said anything about love when she was telling Maisie about Great-Aunt Hazel. That word hadn't come up until she was talking with Rufus and Dora. What did that mean? How could she love someone that she hasn't seen in 11 years? Rufus asked. Why does Mom keep calling her a great aunt? Dora asked. Yeah, what's so great about her? Rufus asked. Do people ever say, this is my so-so Aunt Lulabelle? This is my not that bad Aunt Jane? He'd made up both those people on the spot. The kids' parents were both only children, so the kids didn't have any regular aunts. Unless this Hazel lady is going to give us a bunch of money, I'm calling her Terrible Aunt Hazel from now on because she's making us move. Great Aunt isn't about her being nice or not, Maisie said. It just means she's related by being a sister to somebody's grandma or grandpa, not a sister to somebody's mom or dad. So whose sister is she? Dora asked. One of our grandmas or grandpas? Or Mom's grandma or grandpa? She's... Maisie began and realized she didn't know the answer. I guess we'll have to ask Mom. Even their grandparents had always seemed distant and hazy to Maisie. Their only grandparent who was still alive was her dad's father, and he lived far away in Oregon. On the rare occasion when he called or visited, he never talked about anything but fishing. So why was some random great-aunt so important all of a sudden? Maisie didn't want to believe Rufus's theory that it was all about money. She was like Dora in that. But she didn't have any better ideas. Rufus tugged on the pocket of Maisie's shorts where she'd tucked her phone. Here's what you have to do, he said. You've got a phone now. Use it. Call Dad and get him to talk Mom out of ruining our summer. Maisie pulled the phone out and the screen came to life, glowing brightly in the dim closet. Having a phone really did feel miraculous. It was like being in a fairy tale and owning a genie's lamp. In the glow from the phone screen, Rufus and Dora looked just as awestruck as Maisie felt. Maisie tapped the phone icon. Then she tapped the empty face above the word contacts. The screen came up blank. "Oops," she said, "I don't have Dad's number in here yet." She didn't know it either. Dad was out of town, and sometimes even out of the country most weekdays, and some weekends too, all for his job. So there was no telling when he'd be in a totally different time zone or stuck in some business meeting that couldn't be interrupted. He was always the one who called them, not the other way around. "But this is an emergency," Dora cried. Rufus and Dora smashed their heads alongside Maisie's to peer down at the phone screen. The three of them were so close together, Maisie felt like she was rebreathing all their air. The closet really wasn't big enough for all three of them. "I thought you said this used to be terrible Aunt Hazel's phone," Rufus asked forlornly. "Wouldn't she have had Dad's phone number in here?" "I think Mom or somebody erased all of Aunt Hazel's contacts," Maisie explained, "and deleted her apps and stuff. So even though it's an old phone, it's just as empty and has as much space as a new phone would for me to add my stuff." She tried to imagine what apps and links an old lady might keep on her phone. YouTube videos where everyone was ballroom dancing to classical music. Influencer sites where people talked about dentures. Cat videos? Yeah, probably cat videos, she thought. Those things are universal. Strangely, she felt a pang of sadness that she hadn't gotten the phone before it was scrubbed. Maybe Great-Aunt Hazel had had exquisite taste in cat videos, and Maisie could have impressed the kids at school by showing them new ones. "So you can't call Dad after all," Dora moaned, "even with a new phone." Dora and Rufus began a heated discussion on whether or not they could hide out in Maisie's closet all summer and where they would go to the bathroom, when just then Maisie heard one of the most beautiful sounds in the world, her phone dinging with an incoming text. Her phone, hers. This was a momentous occasion in Maisie's life, even as she sat half on and half off an outgrown pair of flip-flops. Even as her brother and sister talked about poop, she, Maisie Louise McGraw, had just received her first text message ever. "Did you hear that?" she asked Rufus and Dora. "Maybe Mom gave Dad my phone number, so now he's texting me. So I can get text back and get him to change everything. Or maybe Mom gave my number to all my friends' moms, and they're all going to start texting congratulations." Maisie dug her phone out of her pocket again and flipped it face up. 2 lines of type had appeared on the lit-up screen under an unknown number. And what they said were, "Hey, diddle diddle, are you ready for your riddle?" Chapter 4. "Junk text," Rufus scoffed. "You just got spammed, and you'll be scammed if you answer it." "Want me to show you what Mom does when she gets messages like that?" Dora offered, reaching for Maisie's phone. "She makes this disgusted sound, kind of like, but kind of like, and then she stabs her finger on the picture of the trash can." "Like somebody putting a stake through a vampire's heart," Rufus adds hopefully. "And then she mutters, delete and block. Done. Oh no, I'm not falling for that one." Dora finished with a pretty impressive imitation of her mother's voice. Maisie swung her phone to the side, out of Dora's reach. One of her problems of being a big sister to Rufus and Dora was that sometimes she felt younger than them. Or maybe that wasn't quite the right way to see it. She just felt less practical, less certain, less aware. It was like Rufus and Dora had been born knowing how the world worked, while Maisie still didn't understand. She wondered about things more than anyone else she knew. She never seemed to be on the same wavelength as the rest of the world, and Rufus and Dora were. She had not looked at the words, "Hey diddle diddle, are you ready for a riddle?" and thought, junk text. She'd thought, yes, I am, she'd thought. I've been waiting for this my whole life. Clearly, she was a fool. "Maisie," Rufus warned, "you aren't thinking about answering that text, are you?" Maisie said. She lifted her arm high, holding her phone away from Rufus too, though she wouldn't put it past him to just stand up and grab the phone from her hand. "This used to be Great-Aunt Hazel's phone," she said, coming up with a quick excuse. "What if that message was from one of her friends who doesn't know it's not her phone anymore? Maybe I should ask Mom if she recognizes this phone number before I delete anything. You think terrible Aunt Hazel and her friends send each other nursery rhyme riddles? Rufus asked. He slapped his hand against his face in mock horror. Like, oh no, Hazel, the sheep's in the meadow, the cow's in the corn. What should we do? No, Rufus, what you're saying is from a different poem, Dora corrected with great seriousness. That hey diddle diddle thing is from the one about the cat and the fiddle and the cow jumping over the moon. She blinked intently up at Maisie. Do you think this Hazel person is worried about the dish running away with the spoon? She lowered her voice like she was telling secrets. Is there something wrong with Hazel and her friends? Maisie could not believe she was hiding in her closet with Rufus and Dora talking about nursery rhymes. That's when Mom finds the three of them in the closet and says, Oh, good. You're all working together to figure out which clothes Maisie should take to Maryland. When you're done here, why don't you work on Rufus's closet next? She turned as if to go, but then she spun back around. Oh, I almost forgot why I came looking for you, she muttered. So many details to keep track of tonight. Maisie, this is something Great-Aunt Hazel sent for you, along with the phone. I set it aside when I opened the box, and well, here it is now. See, I didn't forget it completely. Mom held out an old-fashioned looking book bound in nondescript brown. Maisie caught sight of only one portion of the title of the cover on the cover, the word guide, and she groaned. Oh, no, Mom, please. I don't need any reading assignments about rules for using a phone. Believe me, we've had a million how to stay safe on the internet lessons already at school. She shot a warning glance at Rufus and Dora, in case either one of them felt like snitching that Maisie had been about to open a scam text, in spite of all the lessons. Not a reading assignment, just a gift, Mom said, and still smiling. She dropped the book into Maisie's lap. It might make you feel closer to Great-Aunt Hazel. It looks like one of those photo albums from when Mom and Dad were kids, Dora said, fingering the embossed spine of the book. From before everyone started keeping pictures on phones or in the clouds. Hey, that wasn't that long ago, Mom countered. Don't make me sound a million years old. It looks like it could be a guide on how to use cell phones in 1802, Rufus giggled. Then he began imitating. Starteth the phone with the on button, and waiteth until the sign of the apple, with one bite taken out of it, appeareth. Okay, wise guy, you know they didn't have cell phones in 1802, Mom laughed, ruffling his hair. Even though the book was in Maisie's lap, Dora nudged it open. Aw, it's just full of blank pages, Dora complained, turning them quickly. Some gift, Rufus sneered. Oh, I get it. It's a writing assignment, not a reading assignment. Maisie's supposed to fill it up. Ha ha, Maisie, you got homework. Mom narrowed her eyes at Rufus. Speaking of homework, she said, did I forget to ask? Rufus jumped to his feet. I'm doing it now, before bedtime. Oops, me too. Dora scrambled up as well. Both kids raced away. You're welcome, Mom said, reaching out to pat Maisie's head. Maisie had so many things she needed to say to Mom right now. Mom, don't make us move to Maryland, not even just for the summer. And what's really going on? And am I being ridiculous, thinking a silly little text means anything when half of it is just nonsense words from a nursery rhyme? And seriously, why would Great-Aunt Hazel want me to have some book with blank pages? But trying to decide which thing to say first was way too much for Maisie. Don't stay up too late reading, Mom said with a final pat to Maisie's head. Great. Now I have another question, Maisie thought. Why would Mom worry about Maisie staying up too late reading a book that was nothing but blank pages? Mom had already turned around and was heading out the door of Maisie's bedroom. Maisie didn't call her back. She didn't follow Mom either. Instead, Maisie kept leafing through the pages of the book Great-Aunt Hazel had wanted her to have with the phone. Maybe something weird was happening with Maisie's eyes because she kept thinking she could almost see something written on the next page. But once she turned to it and held the book completely open, that page would be blank too. That happened again and again and again. Maisie turned the pages faster, like she thought she'd have the element of surprise on her side, and she might catch the words on the next page before they vanished. But no, she leafed completely through the entire book, twice, forward and back, and never once found a single word written inside it. Every page was empty. Sighing, Maisie slammed the book shut. She stared down at the cover, half expecting the giant word guide to have disappeared too. But it stayed there, solid and glinting, gold against the brown. Maisie tilted the book to catch the light a little better. Now she could read the rest of the words of the book's title, which were smaller and more faded, practically blending in with the background. The book's title wasn't Guide for Kids Getting Their First Phone or A Kid's Guide to Cell Phone Rules or anything like that. In fact, as far as Maisie could tell, it had nothing to do with phones. Instead, the words on the book's cover said, Guide for Moonleapers. Chapter 5. Moonleapers? Maisie whispered. It made her think of the line from the Hey Diddle Diddle nursery rhyme that Dora had just quoted. The cow jumped over the moon. Jumping and leaping were pretty much the same thing, weren't they? So Great-Aunt Hazel thought I needed a guide for cows? Maisie wondered. And it's blank because cows can't read? She huffed in indignation. But she reached out a finger to trace the faint word on the cover of the empty book. M-O-O-N-L. Moonleapers. Sounded like something cool, like a club Maisie wanted to join. She let the book slide from her lap and stood up. After a moment, she picked up the dress Dora had pulled down and draped it over the book to hide it. Then she tiptoed over to the doorway and out into the hall. She looked right and left, making sure the coast was clear, then darted quickly towards Mom's office. There, she finds Hazel's address on the package that the book and phone came in. And with her new phone, she begins to investigate. Grinning, she pulled the phone from her pocket and looked up Carriage Lane Senior Center in Carriage Springs, Maryland. Maybe she could find an email address, or maybe she could text and ask for the best way to reach Great-Aunt Hazel and get all her questions answered that way. She had a feeling her school librarian would be really proud of her right now, that she was going straight to the original source. Carriage Lane Senior Center had a fancy website with photo after photo of all old people looking like they were having the time of their lives. Maisie finds the number of the senior center and she's just about ready to call when, just then, her phone began to vibrate. And then it began to play tinny old-fashioned music that gave Maisie a funny feeling in her stomach. Because, isn't that the Hey Diddle Diddle song? The Carriage Lane Senior Center website vanished, replaced by the number that was calling her. Never answer strange numbers, Maisie reminded herself. That's like one of the first rules of... Wait a minute, that number wasn't strange. It was the same one Maisie had seen on the Carriage Lane Senior Center website. Maisie stabbed her finger against the green answer button and raised the phone to her ear. Hello? She said, her voice coming out so faintly she had to clear her throat and try again. Hello? Only silence greeted her on the other end of the line. No, not silence. The sound of someone breathing. Right, and these are the kind of calls you're supposed to hang up on immediately. Hello? Maisie said again, promising herself this was her last try. Maisie? A creaky old lady voice rasped. Great-Aunt Hazel? Is that you? Maisie, I thought there'd be more time, but I have to pass the torch. You're the Moonleaper now. If you say so, but about that, I have so many questions. I'm so glad you called. Can you just tell me? But Maisie didn't even have a chance to finish her sentence. The line went completely dead. Chapter 6. Was that really Great-Aunt Hazel? Maisie immediately calls the senior center back, but this time, a bored, kind of snarky receptionist answers the phone. But his tone changes once Maisie says who she's trying to get a hold of. Hold on while I look her up. Oh, oh. Now mocking voice was sad voice, maybe even fearful voice. There's no way you were just speaking with Hazel Tadwick. You must be mistaken. This call will have to be transferred to an administrator. Is there an adult there who can participate in this conversation? You should not call back. This is not a topic for children to be involved in. Instinctively, Maisie stabbed her finger against the red hang-up button on her phone. She sat frozen on the floor of Mom's office, her heart beating fast. What was that about? She wondered. She replayed both conversations in her mind. The scratchy old lady voice saying, I have to pass the torch. You're the moonleaper now. The sad, fearful young voice saying, this is not a topic for children to be involved in. She had to admit she didn't know for sure that it had been Great-Aunt Hazel on the first call. She didn't know if sad, fearful young voice might be right, that whatever was going on with Great-Aunt Hazel shouldn't be discussed with kids. But Great-Aunt Hazel wanted me to have her phone. She wanted me to have the guide for moonleapers. Not that it helped, when every single page seemed to be blank. And it still made no sense that Great-Aunt Hazel had picked Maisie for either of those gifts when she hadn't seen Maisie in more than a decade. Maisie sighed. She still trusted the voice telling her she was the moonleaper now, more than she trusted any voice that was bored, annoyed, snippy, mocking, sad, fearful, and only very, very reluctantly respectful. Maisie lifted her phone to balance it on her knees and clicked over to the text asking, Hey, diddle diddle, are you ready for your riddle? She carefully typed back. This isn't Hazel's phone anymore. She passed the torch. I'm the moonleaper now. After a second, she added, Do you still want to send me a riddle? She put the phone down and leaned back against the wall of Mom's office. She took a deep breath. And that was all the time it took for the phone to ding with another text. We'll think about it. Maisie snatched up the phone again and typed frantically. Are you testing me? Why won't anyone explain? What does it even mean to be a moonleaper? Why me? Hello? The guide for moonleapers was completely blank. What am I supposed to do? Maisie saw the 3 dots that meant someone was typing a reply. The 3 dots vanished, reappeared, vanished, and reappeared. It looked like whoever was texting with her couldn't quite decide what they wanted to say, or if they wanted to write back at all. Just when Maisie was about to hurl the phone across the room in frustration, an answer popped up. Go to Maryland with your family. We'll be back in touch once you and Hazel are reunited. Maisie typed back, Why? What's going on? This time, there was no reply. Not even 3 dots. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Did you ever think you would need a nursery rhyme to solve a mystery? Well, in this case you do, so I hope you remember that one. Maisie travels with her family, Mom, Rufus, and Dora, to Aunt Hazel's house in Maryland. When she crosses the state line, Maisie texts, I'm in Maryland. Can I have my riddle now? Not yet. When they're in Aunt Hazel's house, she texts again. I'm in her house. Can I have my riddle? Not yet. Not yet. It's not until she is in Aunt Hazel's room that she's able to get her riddle. But it's really hard. It's not until she gets some help from a cat and a dog. Sound familiar? Hey diddle diddle. I wonder if there'll be a cow. So she gets her riddle and she begins to learn what a moonleaper is. And once she solves the riddle, there's print in the book. To find out more about what it means to be a moonleaper and why only they can save the world, this is Moonleapers by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This has been Chapter Book Storytime. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.